For only $10 a day, you can free Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
Would you mind identifying what you are?
We are the dreamers of dreams.
Are they in the proper approach pattern for today?
Negative.
Dispatch Ajax. All weapons! Now! Charge the lightning field.
Pause. Did we ever open the episode? Should we do that?
No.
I don't think we actually did, unless we're just going to roll with what we did. We can just, welcome back to Dispatch Ajax. This is Jake.
I'm Skip.
That's Skip. And we're
That's
talking
me.
Highlander.
Just gabbing about Highlander.
Just gabbing about them MacLeod boys.
Gabbing about them damn MacLeod boys. Got in the garbage again.
Oh, man. What kind of pickle? How are they going to get out of this one?
I caught him rummaging through the garbage again.
You know, the creepy thing about them MacLeod boys is them opposable thumbs.
You gotta set traps. You gotta set up traps. You gotta put a jar with an egg in it. You gotta so you get yourself a MacLeod.
Quick timing note. So
Yes.
it is 4:00 currently.
It's 4:00 somewhere.
Uh-huh. So
Jimmy Buffett. That's a Jimmy Buffett. Is that the timing you're talking about?
The hate bubbles inside of me.
Urge to kill rising. It should be all right. Oh, we'll play it by ear. I got an eye on the clock. I got the eye on the prize.
I've got the eye of a tiger.
No. It's because I won the gathering. And now I have the prize.
We're talking about Highlander.
Oh, God, we are! We are talking about Highlander again for the, 8th installment, one of which I'm sure will turn into an episode.
Just like Highlander, it will never end.
It is just like Highlander, this podcast miniseries is immortal and makes very little sense.
We just hope you don't want to cut your own head off at this point.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. You got him, Jake. You got him. Got him good. So, yeah. Basically, we, in one of the more unusable audio episodes, we did discuss at some length Highlander 2 and 3. I think the thing we can draw from that is that they suck, and Highlander 2 is a nightmare thing that only exists in a realm of pure evil. So the Highlander 3, we don't really touch on much because there's really not a lot of need to. It doesn't really mean anything except for the fact that it retcons Highlander 2 out of continuity, but then also is immediately retconned out of continuity itself. And of course, when we say continuity, we are almost always referring to Highlander the series because it's the backbone of Highlander lore.
Huh.
It's kind of like in Star Trek in that way that the fundamental things we think about Star Trek today, looking backwards, continuity-wise and like trope-wise, most of that didn't come into being until some point during the Next Generation. And we don't think about it that way because we think of it like it's always been that way and that TNG was just like the next step. Founding of the Federation and replicators and, a lot of the technobabble stuff, a lot of the backstory of how Starfleet works, a lot of the rules that they follow really don't come about until the Next Generation. And Highlander's a lot the same way in that we kind of think of it retroactively, right? Like we think, oh, this is what Highlander's always been like. But really, it's just the series because those movies don't make any damn sense. They don't seem to be following any rules of any kind. filmmaking or otherwise. So,
Well, speaking of the series, what would you say would be the key elements that the series brings to the franchise?
okay, that's a good question posed. Do you have some in mind?
Well, the Watchers for one.
Okay, that's good.
We
should probably tell them what the Watchers are.
Well, okay, so these short, bald-headed guys, and they kind of float up in space with robes. The Watchers are kind of more like a, what would you say, Highlander fan club?
Yeah, Highlander stands. They kind of run the website.
And
they run the blog.
They just like to watch. Only Highlander fans?
They run the Highlander Discord, which actually is just a GeoCities site, because actually found a Highlander fan page website. I got a ton of info off it. I think I sent it to you that night.
Yes, it's amazing.
It's amazing because there's no rhyme or reason to the way that the information is organized or disseminated upon us. A lot of it is just conjecture mixed with fan fiction mixed with actual things from the show, but all in the same paragraphs.
And trying to interpret ancient mythology and fit it onto the archetypes of the characters.
Yeah, to explain where they come from or something.
And it almost kind of works. If you follow some of the lines of logic, you can see where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more just shooting web from somebody's brain, and you're kind of seeing what sticks to the wall.
Yeah, that's an odd analogy. Yeah. So I think the Watchers are a good example of background. Yeah, they watch. They're a group of humans who know about the Immortals and document their exploits. As a vanguard of their secret, kind of, but
are you aware of them doing any type of history project? I don't remember them ever trying to go back and find the first Immortals.
Well, they kind of do vaguely. It was bad record keeping.
Every time someone's going to burn down a Highlander Library of Alexandretta.
Alexandretta. Wow. Okay. Geeks Outrage. That is our actual natural history. Continuity set up by Steven Spielberg films. That's the reality in which we live.
Yep, that's history.
The Watchers record but do not interfere with history, and
except when they do.
They supposedly don't. That's their whole thing, is they record the game and they keep tally of who's still alive and how many kills each one has, but they don't really get into that until the movie Highlander Endgame, which is their Star Trek Generations, when they go from series to movies. The main protagonist Watcher that we follow is a guy named Joe.
Hey, I'm Joe. I like watching Highlanders.
I like to watch.
Hey, cut his head.
Yeah, get it. That's a big sword you got there.
You got time to stab me? Huh? Oh, that's the sword joke too far. Yeah.
I don't know. It's dry well. I don't know. It's my fault.
Keep plumbing it.
His name is Joe Dawson. His name is Robert Paulson. And he owns a bar.
Then he let go from the force, a disgraced for some reason, and then somehow he gets into following Highlanders.
I thought it was because he was shot, because he has that cane and the limp. He's basically Frasier's dad.
Yeah, a little nicer.
Except he plays guitar every now and then. And he doesn't have the dog. But other than that, it's a dead bringer. John Mahoney. Anyway, that really doesn't matter.
Nope, not at all.
The Highlander thing is more important. So, yeah, Joe Dawson, the main Watcher, what they do is they record the history of Immortals and their plight and their foibles. But every now and then, Joe steps in to help Duncan because, why not?
How do they get all the money to do this? How do they get the money in the free time?
Yeah.
It's wealthy benefactors, but who are these people? And what is their aim?
Who are these people? I gotta
Where do they get this money from?
It's a weird thing. In Endgame, they're kind of portrayed as monastic, like the Knights Templar or something.
But I always thought that was just a few of them. That was like a sect of the Watchers.
That's the sanctuary, yeah, where if you don't want to be in the game anymore, you go and you hide out there. I guess that's why it's kind of monastic, but it is a church. So I guess that's looking too far into that one, but I kind of have a feeling it's like, Russell Nash. They've just collected over time all this wealth and all this. Because there's no like Lex Luthor out there giving them money, it's.
How do we know?
Well, I mean, they never say, but I mean, like, how would that work throughout history? Through all time? I mean,
well, how does it work that they collected money and didn't spend it over hundreds of years telling people they're watching other people? Oh, those people, those are immortals, and they cut each other's heads off, and then lightning shoots out, and they keep going on for hundreds of years.
That'll be $20. Yeah, they're just standing on the street corner explaining the craziest fights they saw, and then people hand them money.
Yeah, I don't know. It always kind of like bothered me. It's one of those things that they don't really get into, I feel, because you're just like, it just happens.
Yeah, I mean, they do have a lot of resources. They have like their own like computer programs, and like even churches need tithes or like donations.
Yeah, it's like Joe. Joe is obviously not wealthy.
Half his paychecks going to the Watchers, man. He's getting garnished every week.
I feel like the Watchers are helping him own his bar and keep his life going, providing him with a car and those things. But where that money comes from, I'm just thinking like the inner workings of, let's say it's old money. Well, old money would be connected to powerful people.
Mm-hmm.
And so is the secret of Immortals and Highlander and Gathering, is that with those powerful people? And then what are they utilizing the Watchers for? What is their end game?
Yeah, it's true. Because if it's really benevolent, why would they keep doing it? If there is a benefactor, what would their motivation be other than like, well, this is tradition and we, hold this to be sacred? But I mean, even that, you would figure somebody would come along and be like, no, we're just going to go out and wipe them out.
Yeah. Or you're going to like you're going to pull your resources behind the person you think is going to give you favor as they ascend to the top of humanity.
Mm-hmm. How do they manage to stay secret and hidden and operational even throughout the Middle Ages and the Renaissance? I mean, the Catholic Church had a long history of sniffing out like other groups that they didn't like and just wholesale exterminating them. How did they not just wipe out the Watchers unless there was like an immortal pope or something,
Dun dun dun.
Pope Immortal the 16th.
Pope Immortus.
I mean, even the Catholic Church exterminated the Knights Templar when they decided they didn't like them anymore. They had too much power and influence. If they wiped out whole religions, like
Mithras?
Mothra. When they wiped out Mothra, the Catholic Church finally declared war on Mothra.
A giant pope versus Godzilla. I want to see it.
Who wins? We all do. You would think that the only people powerful enough to be able to do that throughout the Middle Ages would have been the Catholic Church.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that's not even getting into the 21st century, trying to hide from all these 3-letter organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Is the IRS knocking on their door for all the funds for these computers and satellites and cars? And
yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I'm not really. I mean, like there would have to be government organizations that are actually shadow departments that keep everybody's trail clear.
Yeah, but if they do that, that means people in high places know.
Right, which means that either some people in high places are Watchers or they are Immortals. But most Immortals don't know the Watchers exist. They're kind of oblivious to it. Also, as it turns out, the Watchers are incredibly inept because at one point, one of the most successful, is that the word to use? I don't know. One of the most prolific Watchers.
Yeah. Prominent.
There you go. Is Mithra or Mythos. Wow, it's Mithra. That's good. Oh man.
Yeah.
Mythos is a Watcher, but they don't know that he's immortal. You're not doing a very good job.
How does that happen? Man, come on.
And he's like the oldest one. Everybody knows who Mythos is, but the Watchers. And when they finally reveal it, they're like, damn.
I've been eating lunch with you, Mythos, for, 40 years. And I've gotten a lot older, but you just stay the same age.
You're so good at watching.
Man, that's weird.
It's super
What's your routine?
Strange. Yeah. What's your skincare regimen like?
Ah, you're vegan. Okay, that explains a lot. Okay.
You know, that actor that played Mythos, his like big role after Highlander was he was like an extra essentially in X2.
Electric Boogaloo.
The second X-Men movie, Rise of the whatever. No, it's just called X2.
It's just called X2.
We used to make fun of names of sequels back then for being bad. Like there was always just The Reckoning or Resurrection or whatever. But now it's like Rise of some garbage that doesn't have anything to do with the movie. Okay.
Rise of the garbage.
Yeah, really. I mean, you just summed up most of J.J. Abrams' influence on modern cinema. But anyway, yeah, he was one of Stryker's like shock troops that invaded the mansion. And you could barely recognize him because he was wearing camouflage face paint and the night vision goggles. But I saw him in the credits.
Did he at least get stabbed by Wolverine at the fridge?
No, I don't think. I think he dies off screen. Actually, it's really sad. Like, yeah, he's 6,000-year-old immortal. He dies off screen in an X-Men movie. That's a bummer.
I always thought he would be a good like sub-level villain in a direct-to-video Steven Seagal feature.
Oh yeah,
from like 2004.
I'm guessing doing like a Russian accent,
vaguely Eastern European.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, vaguely like Ukrainian or something. Somebody that Putin hates. It's like Chechen or something.
Yeah, I'm a Boltonian.
It's not a thing. I'm from Gary Oldman stan.
Old mania. So the Watchers.
So anyway, that's all like Highlander. So Joe's like the main, and Mythos was a Watcher, and it turns out that he was also immortal, and they kind of just like, he's just like, gotcha, and then they all kind of drop it because what are they going to do? They're the Watchers, they don't do anything. But they do, and Joe just kind of helps out Connor because they're friends, or Duncan. Sorry, Duncan. God damn it again.
You could just say MacLeod, and then you're just covered.
He helps out the clan MacLeod. He does. I mean, it's not a lie. Yeah, and so like the Watchers are, I think, one of the main. The show is unique because it's not. The premise of the show seems to be set up, and not at the beginning necessarily, even though they do introduce the Watchers early on. But it seems to be set up to where like the premise isn't just following around a MacLeod doing immortal things. It's kind of like they originally wanted it to be told through the eyes of the Watchers, like through, because like even Joe Dawson does the intro. He voices over the intro in like the later seasons, like seasons like 3 and 4. He's like, this is Duncan MacLeod, we're the Watchers,
Yeah.
And I feel like they were trying to do that to make it sort of like, maybe as part of their pitch to get the show, because otherwise, otherwise the pitch is literally just like, well, it's Highlander but a show.
Yeah, yeah, it's Immortal of the Week,
right? Yeah, it is Immortal of the Week. Yeah, and all of the villains have names that start with K. It's a new thing we're trying out. It's like Klingons. Yeah, there's a lot of Star Trek parallels here. So the Watchers are. I feel like they're kind of the backbone of the whole thing. But they don't really focus on them as much as you would think they would.
Well, that's also like, how much can you focus on them?
Yeah.
I mean, how interesting can that, if you're taking the story away from the Highlanders, what are you really doing? Hi, I'm Joe, I watch. Okay.
He's just like in their bathroom, like behind the shower curtain, That's the entire series. Yeah, I mean, you're right. That premise is kind of a dead end. But so that's one of the fundamental pillars, I think, is that we now know that there are a group of people who have always known, which makes sense. I mean, like if Immortals have been fighting since literally the dawn of time, since mankind's existence, then somebody's going to figure it out.
See, having an organization that has a firm end point to go to, instead of just, well, we just do this. I just watch TV because I need to watch TV. Who's going to watch TV if I don't watch TV?
Right. That's true. Something's always on. Yeah. I mean, you could say The Gathering would be their sort of ultimate conclusion, but for being an organization that knows everything about them, and records everything through history. They don't even know what the prize is. They don't know when the gathering's happening. They don't know if it's happening right now. They don't know where it's going to be. They don't know what the prize even is.
Well, let's be honest. Nobody knows what the prize is.
I know, but if anybody did, shouldn't it be them?
Not the characters, not the writers, not the directors.
No,
nobody.
Panzer Davis, no clue. Sounds like a Sega Saturn game or something. But.
Panzer Davis coming this fall. Get it for your Jaguar system.
For your Neo Geo home. Your 3DO. I'm going to play it on the Atari Lynx coming up soon. So yeah, I think
they were cat-based game systems.
They do. Yep. Yep.
Calico 6000.
Calico. I'm just thinking of John Colicos, the guy who played Baltar and Core. Just game systems based on John Colicos. That's what you should do.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The actor, not any of his characters.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Nope. It's a straight line from one to the other. Who wouldn't make that connection?
A to Z. So anyway, yeah, that is one of the backbones of the series that makes it what it is. And I think it's kind of maybe the most important one because through the Watchers, that's how you get continuity, because they're the ones that are like, well, this is the history, this is how everything's shaped up, even though they still don't tell us anything. They still have given us no information, but they have at least created some sort of constancy, some sort of like framework for us to be able to understand what the rules of this universe are. Something the movies fail to do spectacularly in any way, shape, or form. And that's like we mentioned with Highlander 3. Like, so Highlander 1 happens, and immediately, by virtue of it being a sequel, the ending of it is moot. It's retconned because Connor did not win the prize. The gathering may not even be happening, and it's not over at all. And then Highlander 2, of course, which makes literally zero sense, has been retconned and retcons itself out of continuity at least 3 times. The rules are kind of set up by the series, but the movies like Highlander 2 completely negate Highlander 1's ending, and then Highlander 2 is negated by Highlander 3, which goes back and says that like Highlander 1 did happen kind of, but not the ending, and Highlander 2 we're not aliens, and now we're living in, he's living in like Algeria or something. He's in and he was married to the woman from his love interest from the first one, who he never mentioned because she's not interesting. But then she died in a car wreck. Before the continuity of this movie?
The oldest story.
Yeah, it's the oldest story.
Happens every time.
And then they say that somehow there is one other immortal other than Connor. Even though they don't really talk about him having the prize, the other immortal is only alive because he was trapped in a cave by a Japanese wizard. Which,
yeah, but then they just
there's your pitch. That's an elevator pitch right there.
That's a good pitch. But I mean, then they just retcon that because there were Highlanders all over all the time, and new Highlanders being spawned constantly.
I think that's the other most important thing that the series establishes, is that there are new immortals being born currently. So even if this is the gathering was going to take 1 billion years, which
is something I wish they would explore more, that there are always going to be newer mortals. So fighting to the end for the prize, that's never going to happen.
That's an interesting angle to take. I never really thought about that. Yeah, like what if the gathering never comes? Like what if it's just myth and folklore? Like that's actually an interesting approach. Then you could just sort of delve into the pointlessness of not only being immortal, but of their entire mythos. There it is.
Innately, if you just had no point to like living forever, then you try to better yourself and better those around you. You know, try to make rise, a rising tide lifts all ships. or the people who are like, I'm tired of this, and they just want to end their own existence.
Wouldn't there be 3 archetypes? Because you'd have the anarchist nihilists, you'd have like the Kurgans.
You don't have to worry about them. They're just nihilists.
Must be exhausting. Then you have the altruists, like the MacLeod boys.
No damn MacLeod boys.
That's what Endgame should have been. It should have been Dukes of Hazzard with 2 not Scottish men playing Scottish men.
Now you see them there MacLeod boys. They're caught in quite a bucket of syrup.
I guess you do carry syrup in buckets in Canada. I mean, that's a cop buddy movie waiting to happen. Like, I totally watched them MacLeod boys. The MacLeod boys got up into a ruckus. They were caught in the fracas down by the creek.
Well, but it's like least charismatic immortals. I was like, I'm MacLeod, you're MacLeod. So
we both had long hair at one point.
Yeah,
that's a show.
That happened.
This is our show.
Yeah, we got haircuts.
As bad as Christopher Lambert's hair was, it basically was the exact same haircut as Mel Gibson from Braveheart.
Oh, yeah,
in the first movie. And so you kind of think like, I guess it's a Scottish thing. I guess it's a medieval Scottish thing. But that doesn't explain Duncan's like romance novel haircut. He keeps in a Seagal style ponytail the entirety of the series.
Skip. It's called being sexy.
It's
Try it out.
I wear a lot of loose silk shirts. If you just described the aesthetic of what's supposed to be the sexy, leading man, Duncan MacLeod, it just sounds like an archetypal swinger. He's like an 80s like cokehead swinger guy who owns a hot tub.
I would love for some Highlander to come at night and he's just in like this half undone, fluffy robe. And he's like, "Come in for a drink, why don't you?"
He just looks like Alfred Molina from Boogie Nights.
This is the good bit of the song.
That's the Highlander we deserve.
Because you got to know there were years where he was just like, you know what? I'm moving to Colombia, and this is just my life for the next 5 years.
The show is French-Canadian. We have to mention that. It's not an American show. It's a French-Canadian produced series. Man, that franchise really is kind of worldly, isn't it? The second movie was shot in Argentina. The first one was shot in Scotland. The series is shot in it's a contractual thing for their production, but half of the show has to be shot in France and then the rest can be shot in Canada. So like there are whole seasons where Duncan is just living in a houseboat in Paris. He can see the Eiffel Tower from his houseboat. That sounds nice. Like, where did he get that money? Where did Duncan get his money?
Well, now see, the Highlanders, they all make sense. Them all having money and being rich, I get that. You could put money just in a bank, let it accrue over time.
Yeah, you give a gold Krugerrand or whatever.
Having them be rich, I get that. And it makes sense. Having a destitute Highlander is like, wow, how bad did you have to up?
Okay, but this brings up an interesting existential thing about the premise of the franchise, right? They all do have money. Well, I mean, some of them don't. There's that weird rednecky one that we always
the Mark Singer one.
Yeah, the Mark Singer one where he's
when it's the Beastmaster Highlander in the hills,
where it's Deliverance, but he's immortal. Yeah.
Your girlfriend got a purr to my mouth.
Yeah, that's exactly what that. He even does the accent. It's actually probably more like Southern Comfort than it is Deliverance, but it still tracks. They all have money except for a couple of weird, crazy rednecks or schizophrenics. And to do that, you would have to think that they would have bought land or bought property in the 1800s. Then why don't they control more of human society? Like, why aren't they all super rich and powerful controlling what humans do?
Because that's when you get famous. That's when people know about you. You got to stay hidden.
But a lot of them hide their wealth as it is. So like it's in a trust. Like we owned this property in a trust that's owned by a foundation and a shell company. You could very easily I feel like they don't get into, I understand
but if you're Andrew Carnegie, the Highlander, okay, people are going to interview you. You're going to be known. It's going to be tougher to fake your death. There's too many complications with becoming that type of wealthy and famous.
Well, I mean, if you're Richard Branson or something, yeah, but I mean,
but I do think it's dangerous to, have, I don't know, MacLeod cars, and
Right. I mean, you have to be subtle. But I mean, like,
exactly.
Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen don't make public appearances. People haven't like seen them publicly in like 10 years, but they have their names and likeness slapped all over a bunch of cheap products. But like, you could just not do that. You could just stay out of the limelight.
Yeah, but when does that end?
Well,
they just fake their death, and then
why not? They do that anyway. That's already standard practice for immortals in this universe.
Yeah, but why wouldn't you just want to be wealthy and not famous? Why do you want to have, media control or some giant organization with your name on it?
Some of them want to be anonymous, but still pulling the strings, just like certain people do. Like the Koch brothers, they just want to they don't want to be seen publicly. They don't want anyone knowing what they give money to. They just want to give the money and reshape the world in their image, like Netanyahu's father or, people like that. They just want to reshape the world without anybody knowing.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's probably some immortals who did that, and they make calls to Ronald Reagan,
Sure. Let's talk. Let's see that. I want to see it. That's what I'm saying. Like, why don't they do that more? Like, that's an interesting idea. If you want a villain, if you want a good villain, give me Lex Luthor. Don't give me a Parasite or whatever. Don't give me something that is solved by something that is. I'm saying something that is solved by punching it. Don't give me that. Give me the evil. That's why Lex Luthor is like Superman's greatest foe, because you can't solve Lex Luthor by punching it. You have to he's an existential villain. That's a movie I'd like to see.
Or how about a Highlander stages the death of another Highlander and shows him coming back to life? He's on the run.
A real Blade 3 situation. We got a Blade 3 here. Yes, that's right.
Do we have to Blade 3 it?
It's a movie that exists. Sorry. It sucks real hard.
You should be sorry.
That's the real villain in the whole DCEU problem. It's David Goyer. And people don't talk about that, but it is. He's the one that ruined all of it.
Well,
he is.
I don't think it's any one person's problem or fault.
Okay, I think it's two. It's Zack Snyder and David Goyer, okay? Anyway, we should not be talking about David Goyer right now.
This is your fault. You did this.
It is my fault. That is my fault.
Yeah, I think you either have those few people behind the scenes, or I think you have what I think we talked about Kurgan a bit, who's like, I don't care about people. I don't care about these petty humans. I'm above them. I'm going to live thousands of years beyond them. What they do doesn't matter. And they just live their own life forever. Okay, so the series introduced the Watchers and introduced new Highlanders being made all the time. I can't say that it really did a whole lot more for the mythos beyond that, other than just fleshing things out.
Well, one important thing it seems to do is set in stone the idea that Highlander 1 did happen, 2 did not, 3 did not. Of course, in the first episode, Connor shows up. Right. Christopher Lambert himself is there. They do an immediate retcon of what we've already seen by showing flashbacks of being buddies throughout history.
They're MacLeod boys.
And then they fight Bull from Night Court, which is the matchup we were all waiting on the edges of our seat for. Yeah, that's probably the most important thing that the series does. And it only happens in one episode, but that it establishes that almost everything that happens in Highlander happens, except goes out of its way to establish that even if this is the Gathering, there are other immortals. That was not the final battle. That was not the prize. That was not the final battle. Just cut the last 5 minutes off of the end of Highlander, and everything's fine. So, I mean, I think those are the three basic things that the series really brings to the table.
Well, the show did get us to the final Highlander movie that matters.
Endgame, yeah. Which clever title. The last one that's not terrible. It's not even good. It's really not good, but it's better than some.
It is.
Most?
I think it's just that our expectations are so low that it's not completely awful, and so we think of it as being okay.
Yeah. Well, and it does. I think you and I both appreciated it for the reasons that we just brought up, is that it helps establish the continuity and canon and rules as sort of sacrosanct, even though it completely goes against all of that stuff. The plot of the movie completely ruins everything the show sets up, that these rules are, die-hard rules, by having the main villain being so insidious because he fights on holy ground. And it's like, okay, so you can just do that now? Like, they made that a huge deal in the show. You can't do that. And of course, he does it, which on paper, you're like, oh, he breaks the rules. That's crazy. Good idea. But then it's like, why? I don't know. Shoes? Yeah. He's got shoes with crosses on. Like, sign me up.
He has anti-God shoes.
He has pro-God shoes. That's the problem. I always took it, like, the only way I could rationalize it was that, because he was the son of a priest, that his, like, Christian...
I think it's called
faith,
Preacher Man?
Yes.
Yes.
I apologize. Yes, that is the nomenclature. I figured that it was because he was overtly religious, that it somehow... the rules were different for him, because if it is just about being sacred, like Holy Ground being sacred, that he was able to transcend that because of his inherent belief in those rules not being true. But that really opens up a really bad, that's a bad precedent to set, and not a very good. I mean, that should never have left the writer's table.
It's did you see what he did? He broke the rules. This guy doesn't around. This is not your grandpa's Highlander. He'll kill anybody anywhere.
Yeah.
But of course, they then remove that in the DVD version.
Oh, they did not have them.
Yeah, in the theatrical version, Mythos refers to the sanctuary as holy ground. But because so many people are upset that, mortals are killed on holy ground with no consequence, afterwards, in the DVD version, all references to the sanctuary as holy ground were deleted. So that's only because we saw it in the theater.
They called our house to ask us to watch the movie. This actually happened when Jake and I were roommates in college. We got a phone call that Jake answered the phone, and it was someone asking if Jake was interested in future updates of the Highlander movie franchise. and I just remember you going, yes.
Obviously.
How did you know?
And then we started getting like a Highlander magazine that, like, hey, do you want to buy swords? We're like, I didn't give you my address. How did you find me?
Like, if that's your marketing campaign, that's a shot in the dark, man. Because we went to, how many houses did you have to send that to before you found the two guys that were like, yes, please give me Highlander merchandise?
I like to think that they had like some magic machine that was built in the 80s and could find exactly what they needed, but somehow it got in the hands of the Highlander prop department. I mean, they could have used this to find Bin Laden or the boys from Brazil, but no, we got to find the Highlander fans so we can get them these sweet swords.
These two Highlander fans living in northern Missouri for college. Yes, that's exactly what happened. But maybe we had watchers.
Wow. Poor guys.
They're just watchers who watch people who watch Highlander. That's a rabbit hole I want to go down.
What a waste of money.
Sign me up. I hope it pays well. I don't care if it pays well. Sign me up for that right now.
I just want to know what they're reporting back. Like, oh yeah. So it's Friday the 13th. He has jerked off for the third time today. And he's put on Dune again. So, yeah. He's not even watching a horror film.
Oh.
Huh.
Hey, is that a sword? Oh, no, that's the one from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Oh.
That used to go off if you... Jake used to have a toy sword from Lord of the Rings.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it made noise and lit up like you were fighting. You were sword fighting.
It was Sting.
But if you stepped too close to it, it would go off. Like if you breathed on it or looked at it it would go off. And so you had to creep around the upstairs just to keep that sword from it sounding like you were Errol Flynn in a sword fight.
It was good for catching any thieves or.
But then I did buy you an actual Highlander sword.
Yes, you did. Yeah, one of the many cool items you've gotten me.
No, I didn't get that much stuff. Got me way more stuff, but I remember I had the chance to buy it. I was like, when is this going to come up again? I did. So I bought Jake a replica Clan MacLeod Claymore from the first Highlander. I'm like,
I've only got two swords.
Well, and one's, well, no, all right. That joke's just going to leave. I'm going to leave that dangling. But then of course
high and tight.
The only thing I didn't, anticipate is that you would eventually work in a comic book store too. And then now you have access to that stuff all the time.
They don't have so many swords and previews anymore. They stopped doing that.
Oh, they don't really?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's very rare.
We had a guy, I think one of the reasons we were able to do that was because we used to sell a lot of swords and stuff like on consignment through this other guy who ended up opening a sword shop. He did his entire job was selling swords at like Renfest and stuff.
That's nuts. How do you get?
Yeah, he was
that?
like two doors down. He was like he just sold swords and knives and stuff.
You sure he wasn't 3 doors down?
Well, was he doing military recruitment propaganda commercials that would air before trailers in movie theaters? Because if not, I can't tell.
We will never know the truth.
We'll never know the truth. So yeah. So in the show, it just follows around Duncan MacLeod, who's Connor's cousin, which that's cheap, but whatever. It's fine. At least they weren't like, at least he was, younger. Like he was born decades later. I'll give him that one. At least there's that. It's not like they were like twin brothers or something, and then they just kind of like shoehorned a retcon into that. At least he was like, born 40 years later or whatever, 80 years, whatever it was.
Some amount of years later.
Your immortal, they all kind of blur together, I'm sure. But, and then in the show, he has, unfortunately, as you aptly put it last time we talked about this, it does. One of the good things about the show in showing us that there are new immortals being made all the time by doing a bad thing, by giving us the character of Richie, who is the Wesley Crusher, of the Highlander franchise. It's an astute observation that I had not thought of. Yes, he's the most annoying thing.
He's got nothing.
No, he's the Jonathan Brandis in Sequest. He's
at least he was a heartthrob. I'm sorry to the actor who played Richie, but
and that's fine because he sucks. Richie is an immortal who doesn't know he's an immortal yet. He hasn't had his first death. Duncan knows. The dogs know it. Everybody knows that he's a pre-immortal except him. And then there's for a while there's a is he or isn't he? And then he does eventually get his first death, and then finds out he's immortal, and Duncan takes him under his wing. And it's supposed to be like what Ramirez did for Connor type thing, but it's terrible. You know what? He's the Scrappy Doo of Highlander.
So we don't like Richie.
We're talking about the character of Richie. Yes, we're talking about the character of Richie. I feel very badly that actor died.
Yeah.
But
Stan Kirsch was his name. He was 51.
You know what the archetype is. You know what it is. It's just
he's the character to bring you into this world. It's the stand-in for the audience. So you're like, oh, if I was just a normal person and I became a Highlander, that's what this would be like.
Right.
They probably had all right, Richie's going to be the focus this season. It's like, oh man, this sucks. Everything's good except for this guy.
That was kind of set up to be the premise of the show, is that the everyman, any kid off the street, could be immortal, which is, I think, one of the appeals they were trying to make.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really use that as their premise for the rest of the show. One of the weird things that the show does is it is a success. I mean, it's a successful show in that it keeps getting renewed. And apparently it does well in Europe. I think that was one of the ideas, was that I think the movie did well in Europe. So they were going to try and appeal to the international crowd more than the American crowd. Because, it didn't have a network. It was on at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night on Channel 62, when we were kids, which For people who don't know, that's essentially what the movie UHF is based on. It was a UHF station that didn't have a network affiliate. That used to be a thing where they just showed syndicated stuff all day, every day, which ruled for a long time.
Yeah, we loved it.
Yeah, it was all B movies, and it was like, it's Sunday at 2 p.m. Here's Battle Beyond the Stars. And I'm like, sweet. Yeah, all right.
Up next, Sky Pirates.
Followed by Ice Pirates. One of the weird things that the series does well, I mean, people do seem to like it. I think it does well because it appeals to people like Star Trek fans who like continuity and rules and structure in world building. So it does a pretty good job of that. It is just Immortal of the Week, but they do get into some really interesting themes, and we touched on that before, like some of our favorite moments from that. But then it's so successful that they want to try and spin off. Here's where it gets weird. So they know they want to spin off because they know that this show isn't going to last forever. They know that they want the Immortal to be a woman. They don't have a woman in mind, but they've already introduced the character of Amanda Grayson, who is another Immortal who's basically Catwoman. She's just Catwoman. She's a thief and a con artist who is also immortal. And she, is the on again, off again, are they a thing or not? But they do bang in a few episodes kind of character with Duncan. And at one point they introduce, I think it's like 3 different female characters with arcs that they're like, well, one of these is going to be the spinoff, lead. We just need to find out who's good and who isn't. That's when you get a bizarre love interest who's also from the clan MacLeod in Scotland in an episode when Duncan goes back to reconnect with his roots.
Got to keep it in the family.
Well, I mean, there's far removed, obviously, but that doesn't go anywhere. A lot of them don't go anywhere.
That's kind of Highlander's thing.
Exactly. So essentially, they kind of like settle on Amanda Grayson as the lead for the spinoff called The Raven. It was a disaster, but also one of the most bizarre experiments and set of circumstances that has ever befallen a TV show. Amanda, who's played by Elizabeth Grayson. She used to be, what was she, Miss America or Miss USA? She was one of the two. She was...
Small town in Arkansas, a year after traveling world as Miss America, 1982.
That's right, Miss America, 1982. So Bill Clinton sleeps with her in 1983 when he was governor of Arkansas. But in 1992, that comes up again when Bill Clinton's running for office. And then, of course, during the Kenneth Starr investigation, that gets all dug up again. And poor Elizabeth Grayson is put through the ringer once again, being subpoenaed to testify but before the special counsel looking into Bill Clinton. Here's where it gets really weird. So the man that she's married to while working on the show is a nutbag. He's completely controlling and paranoid. He's like a paranoid schizophrenic, essentially, and thinks that everyone's out to get her. Now, some of the paranoia was fueled by the fact that she was being investigated by Kenneth Starr. And I guess that just put fuel on the fire, but he apparently was controlling of everything that she did, of like what she ate, what she wore, like when she was available to be on set. He completely dominated their relationship in a really abusive way. And it got to the point where, but she was married to, she believed him. And so like the way they were able to get out of testifying in front of Kenneth Starr was to, they would randomly leave in the middle of the night to go to Las Vegas or the Caribbean, or, they had to scheme to make sure that she was shooting out of the country for The Raven when her court appearance was supposed to be, so that she couldn't come back. And so she managed to dodge it, but According to some investigation done by other websites, and this is from an article from a website called Scream Sheet, she was dating a guy who seems to have been both a skilled con artist and an asshole. He convinced her that he was the U.S. ambassador to the Cayman Islands, which was not true. He convinced her that her co-star, Paul Johansson, on The Raven, was a government spy trying to get information from her. And the whole show is kind of like set up as like a moonlighting with immortals thing, because he's like a cop and she's a criminal, and is there a will they, won't they? But there was no romantic chemistry between them because she was being told actively that he was a government agent spying on her and that she was going to be arrested any minute. And so that didn't go well, apparently. But apparently he was also an asshole. Apparently he wasn't a very good guy either. It's conflicting reports, but some people said that Johansson would hit on Grayson all the time, not knowing that she thought he worked for the CIA, to the point where it was reported that he exposed himself to her on set at one point.
Ugh.
He just like straight up dropped his pants in front of her. Yeah, but I mean, nobody knows because there's a lot of like weird paranoid rumors going on during that time. And then the show was not going well. They tried to go like Star Trek Enterprise and not make it a Highlander show, which was the brilliant marketing there.
Let's take away the popular element.
The production company brought on board David Abramowitz and Dennis Barry, who were the creative team that helped really shape Highlander, the series. But they got bought by a German network. They became the new financial backers. Since the German network had no stake in the original series, they made all these like demands, concept changes, script changes, budget cuts, all this other stuff that basically drove those guys out, and they were like, screw this, we're leaving. So it ended up just becoming a really bland cop drama where one of the characters was also an immortal with a sword. So that worked out really well. And then, if that wasn't doomed enough, they had a really hard time putting out episodes because their composer wouldn't do any work. He literally would just not do the job. A refreshing approach to professionalism. This is a quote from one of the editors on the show. It was like pulling teeth to get him to do what had to be done. Pull himself away from the corner bar and actually earn his paycheck instead of drinking it away. That's not good. That's not good.
I might like to go have a night on the town with this guy.
Well, I mean, yeah, let's hang out with him and Sean Connery on set of the original Highlander. Oh, that's a good time. That's a party. The concept of the movie 2 was supposed to be that she was like this. She was a feminist icon, and she was like a powerful woman, doing her own thing in the workaday world or whatever. Should have been like Working Girl, but with an immortal, But instead, just kind of like in Working Girl, most of what she ends up doing is just tied to the motivations of a man. So it wasn't at all what they anticipated the show would be. It just sucked. I mean, it was just not a good show. It was bland. It was boring. Nothing ever happened, essentially. And everyone hated each other, and it lasted one season. And pretty much ruined everyone's career that was involved with it. So,
yeah.
Yep. So that's not good. But then, unfortunately, she's not in it. But then you get Highlander Endgame.
Yes.
Which
the end game has come.
The end game has come, finally. Yeah, it's great. And then it's not great.
It's not great. Yeah, it's not very good at all.
Not very good at all.
Again, our bar is so low. Look what happened with Raven. And we're like, oh, ooh, okay.
Whoa, this is crazy.
Whoa, it's got both MacLeod boys in there?
The villain of Highlander Endgame, basically, we'll just sum that up really super, super quickly. The Highlander Endgame flashes back, sort of retconning the first movie, kind of, and also Highlander the series by showing more of the Clan MacLeod and Glenn Finnan. That when Connor was driven out of the clan, they decided to punish him even further by killing his mother, like burning her as a heretic for a witch. And he goes to try and rescue her, and he ends up killing the priest of the village, which happens to be the father of another immortal who doesn't know he's immortal.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually finds out he's immortal, and then goes on a billion-year, vendetta against Connor. And why he's never been able to find him in all that time, no clue, because it's been 400 years. But he finds out that Connor, basically right after Highlander 1, when his secretary lady is killed in a terrorist attack by Jacob, decides he doesn't want to play the game anymore, and he puts himself in a medically induced coma in a place called Sanctuary, run by the Watchers. And so that he can not kill anyone, but also live.
Because it's a sanctuary for Highlanders who are done with the fighting in the game, and they want to get out of it. So they're protected, but they don't have to live this ongoing life and keep fighting other immortals for eternity.
Mm-hmm.
And Jacob he's Mr. Badass Highlander. He's killed all these Highlanders, and he keeps getting these levels up from every Highlander head he pops off. That's why
they do video
strong.
gamify this.
Yeah, they really do. Yeah.
Which, I mean, I kind of like, though. It adds another dimension to the rules of it. Like, it shows that you're a more badass, like, fighter the more people. It's like the One with Jet Li.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep, exactly.
And they don't really, they kind of hint at that in the series more than any of the other ones. But, like, okay, yeah, they do. They have power-ups. Every time you kill a boss, you power up. And it's like, okay, all right.
Yeah. So he's so strong that neither of their MacLeod boys could possibly take him on just at one, because they'd lose.
Because that's a rule. Because it's a rule, you can only fight one at a time.
That's true.
And so which this movie also breaks because they have because he is a gang of immortals, including Donnie Yu, as the Asian one, and who knows martial arts.
Yeah,
kill a bunch of other immortals as a roving gang of miscreants, like it's Clockwork Orange, and
his bloody well droogs. So then they have to decide. Well, we've got to end this because he's broken into the sanctuary and killed all these other immortals, and if he keeps going on, he's going to get the prize. Blah blah blah. Connor decides to sacrifice himself and give his power to Duncan. And so that
he put Duncan in a situation where supposedly he couldn't do anything to get out of this like sword trap other than cutting off Connor's head. Makes no sense whatsoever. You could just be like, or drop the sword, you know, like, or just not do that thing.
No, it's a dire win.
Possible.
You know. That's the only moves you can do from that particular sword thing, that's the same move they do at the end, right? It's like the special maneuver.
Yeah, that's the callback. The end is the callback to it. They set it up, and it's stupid when they set it up because they're like, what other purpose does this scene serve other than to show what you're going to do at the end? Right? I mean, it's like
completely.
Yeah, it's like 400 years ago, he taught me this weird sword move where you lock swords together behind your heads. And I'm sure this won't come up again later. And then no one mentioned it again. It's like, okay, what? So there's your movie. Here you go. All right.
So skip to the end. They've had big battles. They're locked in eternal struggle.
They introduce another retconned love interest.
Yes, which will then play on later. Yeah, no, she's probably like my favorite part.
It's probably the only really redeeming thing from the movie is that his love interest is a woman who wants revenge on him because she was a pre-immortal, didn't know it. He wanted her to live forever the way that she was because he knew she was immortal. And so he murders her on their wedding night.
Yeah.
So that she'll stay that way forever. Wow.
Yeah.
That's some heady shit.
That's a rough one.
Woo boy.
Yeah.
That is a heady elixir we've got there going. Finally, we've got some moral ambiguity and some,
Yeah.
Sweet.
Faith is one of my favorite parts of the whole mythos there.
The mythos.
The mythos. Yeah, but then, of course, Duncan wins in the end, killing Jacob. Head off. All the power. He's now over 9,000. And
of what unit of measurement is that?
Highlander points.
He's 9,000 heads strong now.
I think if you were to add up all of them, it'd be around 1,000, maybe a little lower.
Yeah, I think it's just under 1,000 because like he had 175 or so, like 176. Connor had 220 something, and Jacob had 661. So yeah, it'd be almost 1,000. Yeah. But I mean, but that includes all the people that those immortals killed.
Yeah, which then goes back. Well, oh geez. Well, then you go back. What those immortals killed? It's infinite. Yeah. No, it's
yeah, because Duncan now has Kurgan's power and memories and all that crazy shit.
Yeah, which they also barely touch on ever.
Except in that one Superman 3 arc where
which was a cool arc.
It was good. Except it gets kind of weird because he like goes to like a Native American shaman or whatever to purge his evil quickening out of him or whatever. It's a little problematic, but it's a good idea. You know, that's the thing that the show does. It takes these questions that we have and then it actually tries to make them episodes. Like it tries to explore the universe by giving us rules and then, well, eventually breaking them, but giving us rules and then playing within the universe's structure, which is great. Which is what we wanted.
Which is exactly. It's the whole reason we love this season. I mean, this
franchise.
Yes, this franchise in itself. It's all about these cool ideas that aren't really defined too well, but gives us so much room to think about them and play in our heads.
That's true. And quickly before we wrap this episode up, because we are going to have to do an episode where we devote entirely to how we fix the franchise from sucking.
We promise you, Highlander will end at some point.
It will die at some point. You guys, there's a bunch of episodes you guys will never even hear. So then there was Highlander: The Source, which came out. It was a sci-fi original, so I'm right there. You're on the right path. In 2007, where it's set post-apocalyptic Earth, and it's a weird hero's journey thing where they're crossing the wastelands to find the source of the immortality. They're not looking for the prize anymore. They're not worried about the gathering. They're looking for the source,
which is also extremely ill-defined. And even when it happens, essentially the source is about being able to have kids.
Yeah. So one thing that I've read was interesting, and I think, yeah, that's bad. That part is stupid. The source, but like they treat the source like the prize, because they've talked about the source before, and they talk about the prize, but they treat the source like it's the prize. Oh, we found the source. Now we can have children. That's not a source. That's a prize, I guess. Like that's not a source of anything.
I mean, none of it really makes sense because there's also they introduce these super Highlander archetypal beings that are
like the guardian of the.
There's the guardian, and then it's all these old Highlanders who tried to get to the source, got close, were rejected by the source, and then turned into different elemental forces. So like one's like a blade-like slug dude.
It's bizarre. They really, really went off the deep end on that one.
None of it makes any sense.
Even the people involved are like, no, that never happened. That movie was a fever dream that Duncan had. Like, oh, okay. All right. That's official canon now that he had a bad dream and it was Highlander the Source.
Yeah, that was a whole year in Bogota where he was just on mescaline and ayahuasca. That's what the Source was.
It's that one season of Roseanne. It's just like none of it really happened. And then, okay. So that's the last like official Highlander movie, right? But wait, there's more.
There's always more.
There's always more. There were a series of fan movies produced, which normally either you get sued for or they're just terrible or both. But these were approved of by Panzer Davis Production Company. And the guy that made them was actually given like a budget and permission to write and direct his own Highlander fan movies that ended up being official extras on the series Blu-rays.
That's awesome.
But they only made like the first 2 seasons on Blu-ray. So the whole thing ended up getting scrapped, but he still made the movies. and he edited them together into like a long, because they were like shorts, and he edited them together into a longer film. And the Highlander Dark Places is this one specifically, and it introduces Melej Sena Cavaco, a Brazilian immortal, which cool, that's interesting. All right. Is like he has a villain who's Romanian from the 15th century. I don't know, it's whatever. But then we have Highlander : Hans Kirschner. It's about a guy named Hans.
What?
Yes, I'm not making this up. It was a half-hour fan-made Highlander short, authorized by Panzer Davis, and was produced by a company called Devilbane Productions in 2017. It's about an immortal named Hans Kirschner, who's a weary man living at the end of the 18th century. His failures have broken him completely, and he now lives as a drunk, lamenting the past. And his hometown suffers under the rule of a impudent immortal who's taken over entirely. And he has to look deep within himself to conquer his own demons, as well as one who affronts his hometown. It sounds just as interesting as the title. Highlander, this guy.
Hi, I'm Hans.
And then there was Highlander Reunion, which is a short film in 2008 starring Mythos, Joe, and Amanda. That one was not official, but you can still get it. And it's basically like them going, hey, man, remember when we were in Highlander? That was cool.
The good old days.
It's kind of sad. And then, of course, there was, and I had forgotten this existed, but Highlander, the animated series.
7 centuries have passed since the Earth plunged into darkness. 7 centuries since the Jetitor swore to regain for man his lost knowledge and freedom. All the immortals took the oath, all except one who dominates the world. But soon an immortal will come to confront him. His name is Quentin MacLeod. He is the Highlander.
It's very similar to the Flash Gordon thing. Yeah.
What?
94 to 96. So this comes out the same year that Highlander: The Final Dimension is in theaters and Highlander the series is on TV. This is peak Highlander fever. They had toys, they had tie-ins with stuff apparently, but it completely ignores the canon set up by the show, and in it, which is bizarre, Connor is killed before he even fights Kurgan. And this movie then, just like the source, fast forwards to like 500 years in the future, where immortals have all agreed to a truce for some reason to stop fighting. And then once everyone else has taken this oath, it's unbreakable. It's like an enchantment. But a Kurgan knockoff named Cortan.
At least they kept the K.
They kept the K thing. He takes the unbreakable truce as his like opportunity to seize power, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. And then he becomes like the unchallenged ruler of Earth until several centuries go by, and the new immortal Quentin MacLeod, ladies and gentlemen. There's something in the water in Glen Shannon, man, on the Loch Shield.
Well, it's just like in the anime that I'm sure we'll get to, where it's Colin MacLeod.
Colin MacLeod, that's right, yeah. And it's like also 500 years in the future. So Quentin MacLeod's mentor is Vicente Ramirez, who's apparently related to... I don't know how this would even work. It doesn't even make sense.
This reminds me of like when they made like a Rambo cartoon or a RoboCop cartoon, where they usually hey kids, have you been watching the thing you shouldn't have been watching? Well, here's a cartoon for you.
I was just thinking about that yesterday because I was thinking about the Toxic Avenger cartoon, and I'm like, why are kids watching this? Like, yeah, the Rambo series. God, I forgot about that. Yeah. Oh man, I hope it also thanks the Militia Dean in the Rambo series. It's big in Afghanistan, the Rambo TV show.
Oh, just so you know, that Connor MacLeod in the far future, he still has just a button-up shirt and an overcoat. It's the 27th century, but
Brooks Brothers is still king. Yeah. The funny thing about the animated show is that one of the things it spawned was, and this ties it back to the beginning, an Atari Jaguar game called Highlander: The Last of the MacLeods.
Oof.
Yeah. Never played it, but I'm going to try and find one. And there's a fan animated one called The Mythos Chronicles. It's actually played by Peter Wingfield, who played Mythos. And then,
Who had nothing else to do.
Then, of course, yes, the anime Highlander: The Search for Vengeance in 2007. It's a good movie. I think it's one of the better in the franchise.
Yeah. No,
honestly.
I mean, maybe the second best?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not like the greatest thing in the world, but
No, but it's
better than Highlander 3.
I mean, it's made by the same people who did Ninja Scroll and Vampire Hunter D. It definitely has that vibe, that aesthetic the whole way through, which is a great aesthetic to use for Highlander.
Yeah, the animation's great, and once again, it's a post-apocalyptic future where the immortals are wandering the wastelands or whatever. I don't know why they keep doing this. Nobody gives a shit. Just stop it with that. It's basically the last movie. There's a stupid YouTube show that uses the action figures and make it a comedy, it's like sitcom thing, the Connor and Duncan show. And then, of course, they've been saying they're going to reboot the franchise for, I don't know, the last 20 years.
Which is something we will most certainly get into the next time you hear us.
1993. It has been 6 years since the death of Brenda Wyatt, the wife of Connor MacLeod. It has been 6 months since the death of Tessa Knoll, the fiancée of Duncan MacLeod. The Highlanders reunite to make amends and begin happier times. No one has ever known they could do a Highlander show on YouTube. Until now.